Bond. James Bond.
Who are you?
Bond. James Bond.
My name's Bond. James Bond.
Who are you?
My name is Bond. James Bond.
My name's Bond. James Bond. My name is Bond. James Bond. Bond. James Bond. My name is Bond. James Bond.
Can I help you?
Yes, my name is Bond. James Bond. My name is Bond. James Bond.
Mr.
Bond. James Bond.
My name is Bond. James Bond.
The name is Bond. James Bond. My real name is Bond. James Bond. You must take my word for it.
Who are you?
Bond. James Bond.
Bond.
Start ringing.
James Bond.
The name's Bond. James Bond. Bond. James Bond. Bond. James Bond.
The name's Bond. James Bond.
Bond. James Bond.
The name's Bond. James Bond.
Bond. James Bond. Bond. James Bond.
Name?
Bond. James Bond.
Guys, so one of the longest film franchises ever, and then I've been wanting to do this video for a very long time. I'm figuring it's actually going to be one of the best videos I've done on this channel. So if you've been on the channel, I've done a whole lot of movie reviews there, and then I'm so grateful for your likes and then for subscribing and then watching each one I actually post here. And if you're new on this channel, please do make sure to hit that red button over there and then strike the bell icon as well, so that you don't miss out any of these interesting videos I bring to you. So in today's video, we're talking about Ian Fleming's 007 James Bond, produced by Albert R. Broccoli. You know, I did a previous video about the first James Bond film released, Dr. No, 60 years ago. Wow, it's such a long time, and that movie was actually great for a 1962 film. Though the stunts were kind of obvious, the sound was sort of cinematic for me. Most of the action didn't feel kind of raw, but then it was a good movie for that time, you know. And the Hollywood was actually one of the top movie industries to be producing so much good movies at that time, not to think of any other movie company as well. Yeah, and it was a very good thing they did. Now, so back to the main aim for today's video. I'll be taking you back to 1962, and then I'll bring you back to 2021 when we had the last James Bond film being released. It's been a great journey, you know, 60 years today, and then all these movies have been of a very good impact and all that. Yeah, so I wouldn't waste much time. Let's just start with everything. So 1962, we had Dr. No being released. I did a previous video about that, so I wouldn't be talking much about it. And then Sean Connery actually played the role of James Bond in there. It was an excellent movie. We got to hear of Phyllis Leiter, actually Kyo also in there. Money Penny came in there, and it was very good. That was when he first traveled to Jamaica. So I was wondering, Europe to Jamaica, does James Bond actually have to travel around everywhere else? Yeah, that's why he's an MI6 agent. So it's actually set to stop Dr. No, who is a scientist, coming up with a plan to, you know, cause some sort of damage, and then James Bond is the right person to do. And for the length of this video and the much detail, I wouldn't want missing anything out for you. So, you know, once along the movie, I'll just cross-reference whichever list I've made from my laptop right here. Yeah, you can see that, but then it's right in front of me, so that I'm able to flow along with it. The second one is From Russia with Love. This James Bond was set to stop Lecter and also find out about Spectre's secret plot. You know, that's the first time of hearing Spectre in the James Bond franchise. The second James Bond film, 63. And the Spectre has been a dominant organization throughout the James Bond film franchise. Yeah, it was also a great film to watch. Still, Sean Connery actually plays the role of James Bond. Now, the third was Goldfinger. Actually, Goldfinger was the first James Bond movie I gave a huge thumbs up to. James Bond be set to investigate, a gold smuggling ring, and finding out the head is actually Goldfinger. Right from the start, I love it how we are being given the continuity of gambling in the James Bond franchise. And I loved how Goldfinger went about his gambling ways. It was an excellent plan no one could ever think of. Yeah. So Goldfinger, well, it's kind of impressive. I loved what I saw. One of the much details was how he sprayed people in gold right after he killed them to leave a very huge notice. It was an amazing thing. James Bond had this kind of character with him I love so much. Even if he sets out to kill you, he always finds a way to get invited in, and then his plan always works. But such a great film as well, still Sean Connery playing the role of James Bond. The fourth was Thunderball. Thunderball was actually released in 1965. Sean Connery actually played the role of James Bond here. So here, an atomic bomb was actually stolen, and then James Bond was asked to find out who stole it, what, and why. Whenever an atomic bomb is stolen, we get the impression of something bad is about to happen. So, 007 was the best option to call. So the first 4 films were actually, played by Sean Connery as James Bond. Excellent. He's an excellent character. His physique was so on point. I like how he portrayed himself in the film. And one thing noticeable from all the first 4 films is James' attraction to women. It's kind of a dominant thing throughout the James Bond franchise. It's an interesting feature for an MI6 agent. I've watched films about secret agents, and then most of the times they don't have that kind of connection. Only a few. But James Bond is very dominant, yeah. And it's an amazing thing they did there. So from there, we had You Only Live Twice. You Only Live Twice was actually, one of Sean Connery's films. And it was very much amazing. I kind of love the details they put in there. It's so great. Sean Connery's character has been so outstanding throughout his films, and then it was an excellent addition they actually brought in, yeah. And I loved it so much. Right after that, in 1969, we had On Her Majesty's Secret Service. On Her Majesty's Secret Service wasn't actually played by Sean Connery, but then we have George Lazenby playing it. So this gets very interesting. I kind of like the change of character in here. But then Sean Connery is actually going to be one of my favorite, James Bond characters, apart from Daniel Craig. And it was quite an amazing thing. He was asked to protect the daughter of an important personality, and then he actually finds an enemy who he knows about, and then trying to get back at him. It was quite a great, and I love the hitbacks and the throwbacks in there. And then George Lazenby actually executed the role very well. For the first time I heard the title On Her Majesty's Secret Service, I thought it's going to be some sort of being a bodyguard to protect the Majesty on a trip to somewhere, or when she's having a meeting or that kind of stuff. But then it turned out to be a whole different thing. So I'm wondering, was it the Queen herself who actually made a call to the MI6 that, okay, get James Bond on this, mission for me because it matters so much to me? But then it was actually an excellent movie, yeah. And I love that one too as well. So right after On Her Majesty's Secret Service, we also had a change of character. And then having Roger Moore play James Bond was a huge breakthrough for me, let me put it that way. Roger Moore's character was so outstanding. I don't know if all these people were born to actually play the roles they actually played in each movie they actually starred in. So he first came in with Diamonds Are Forever. So Diamonds Are Forever, James Bond was actually tracking down someone who is known for diamond smuggling, but then he had a huge plan attached to him. He had a plan of, creating a very huge and powerful weapon from this diamond. It was so impressive, thinking of what one could actually do with such a thing. Yeah, it was such an excellent thing they did there. Roger Moore's character was very outstanding. Right after that, we have Live and Let Die. So Live and Let Die was also played by Roger Moore, an excellent film in itself. And I kind of love the proposition in there. The characters were so outstanding. Everything was cool. Yeah, not so much to talk of, but it was an actually great film. The third one was The Spy Who Loved Me. So this, we had a US case, The Spy Who Loved Me. So after a submarine is actually missing. James Bond is actually set to find out what happened, who caused this, and why. And then he actually has to team up with a captain whom he has actually had a crossroad with some time ago. As a result, lost his lover. It was quite a great thing, you know. That was the first time I saw a complete teamwork James Bond with a set of people working together on something. All along, either he gets help from one or two people, but then this one was sort of a joint that they had to do together. And it was an excellent movie as well. The fourth one was The Man with the Golden Gun. The Man with the Golden Gun was a huge thing for me. You know, I kind of love it. Scaramanga. I remember that name vividly. Scaramanga was actually the villain. First, his impression of his mission wasn't quite clear until he came across Scaramanga. So at first he was kind of, you know, going as Scaramanga to find out about a scientist who's actually producing solar energy to cause some huge damage. Later on, he found out that Scaramanga is the world's most expensive hitman. He actually has a golden gun, like the title suggests, the man with the golden gun. And then for each kill, he charges $1 million. And then $1 million at that time was such a huge money just for a bullet. It was such a great thing. Yeah, I love it. And then his gun was so beautiful. If you ever come and see the gun disassembled, you wouldn't think it's actually a gun. You would think it's a pack of cigarettes and then a tobacco painted gold. It was such a beautiful thing they did. I loved it. And Roger Moore actually did a very great thing there. And for the fifth ones, I don't know if I should talk of Moonraker first or I should talk of For Your Eyes Only. But then let's dive into For Your Eyes Only. So For Your Eyes Only, a disc from the Secret Service is actually, you know, lost to the bottom of the ocean, and then James Bond is actually tasked to find it out. No one is supposed to know about it because it's so confidential. Now Moonraker, after a space capsule is being adapted, James Bond is actually set on that particular machine to find out who did it and then why the person did it, or the group actually did it. Two great movies, you know, very excellent. And then Moonraker, I was actually having a quite different impression about Moonraker, but then it turned out to be so much good than I even expected it to be. And it was also an excellent one as well. So the sixth is Octopussy. You know, Octopussy is kind of a weird name, you know, but then when you enter the movie, you actually find out that it's an organization. So he is set to actually investigate a crime unit, but then before he does that, he must team up with this lady who has a circus and then called Octopussy. So she's actually supposed to invite James in, and then they join hands together, and then James has to find his way to get his mission done. And all along, these ladies that James has been, you know, kind of having relationships with, they don't actually know what James is about to do until James actually opens up to tell them. Yeah. And James Bond, the character, is actually one of the characters who's very good at impersonating. He has made a whole lot of impersonations right from the start of the film series, and it was also a great thing there. Now, A View to Kill. I wonder why James Bond, played by Roger Moore, had a whole lot of interesting things to bring out, you know. About 7 films or 8 by Roger Moore alone, and then it was a great thing there. Yeah. So A View to Kill was actually released in the 80s, and then it was actually a very good thing they did there. Now, another change of character. You know, I don't know if the James Bond characters were actually getting older or they were living out from their experience, but then with the time each of them spends on a particular film or a particular set of James Bond films, they actually did a very great job at it, and then they made a very good show to come of it. Timothy Dalton also steps in to play James Bond with his first Living Daylight. So Living Daylight was actually a great thing there. You know, it was perfect for him as a first James Bond film he actually did, which gave him so much prominence. To come in with a second one, License to Kill. So License to Kill is when a drug kingpin actually attacks his best friend, Phyllis Leiter, on their wedding day, actually losing his wife, and then Phyllis in a very unstable condition. But then he decides to take matters in his own hands, since the MI6 weren't ready to give him the licenses to help him, you know. They felt like, okay, your mission is over. We gave you a mission, you accomplished it, you failed. Okay, we will send you on another one, but then relax. But then James actually felt that it is best friend we are talking about it, so you can't just leave him hanging, and then he decides to go on a chase. All these happened in the 80s down to the 60s, and they were so good. Now, straight up into 1990s, we also had another change of character. And then this character is one of the popular names you hear around, Pierce Brosnan. So he actually came in with the first appearance of James Bond in GoldenEye. So GoldenEye was actually a very great thing, you know. GoldenEye is actually a tool which is actually used to operate. There, I don't know if I'm going to get it right, but then from the film we actually made known that whenever we have an atomic or nuclear launch straight up into the sky, GoldenEye is actually a sort of an interception unit. So when you use GoldenEye, it actually intercepts whichever nuclear bomb which has been launched so that it stops it from hitting its target. And then this happens to be stolen by an evil organization, and then he has to find a way to bring an end to that. So great a film for Pierce Brosnan. It was actually excellent. He also went on with the second, Tomorrow Never Dies. Tomorrow Never Dies was also a good thing, you know. I loved the details so much. It was actually great. It was actually set to release in '97, which was perfect. Yeah. And then his third film was The World Is Not Enough. So The World Enough was actually, you know, quite a good one by another Pierce Brosnan, and having Die Another Day in the early 2000s. You know, having to actually find out. One thing I love about James Bond is no matter how worse he gets in a particular role he plays, he actually finds a way to come back. So he was actually set to cut a deal for the government agency, and then he's being betrayed, and then he's captured by the enemy. He was held a prisoner for a very long time, and then still didn't give him any information or give up anything at all. Yes, and then it was at this point that M came in. Throughout all the James Bond movies, we've actually had M to be a male. But then, right from the start of Pierce Brosnan's James Bond film series, we actually had a switch of character from M being a male to actually being a female. And then it was first started by Judi Dench. She actually played all the M roles until she actually died in the film, and it was switched back to a male again. It was actually a good thing. So here, after the exchange, you know, the Korean government orders for an exchange, and then they also kind of take James Bond back. Yeah, it was actually a great thing. Now after Pierce Brosnan, then Daniel Craig also played James Bond. So I actually grew up watching the Daniel Craig James Bond movie, and I thought that was actually only the James Bond films which have ever been out. So I gained so much interest in his character. I came to love that character so much, and then he's actually my favorite James Bond character. It was so good of him. His first was actually Casino Royale. I love how Casino Royale was Le Chiffre. It was actually set to, you know, find out everything about a mob banker, Le Chiffre, who actually is a banker to terrorists, to people who are criminals, and then drug campaigns, and then all that. It was actually a good thing. The main agenda of it was to win a poker game, $150 million, and then if Le Chiffre wins, he's successful. If James Bond actually wins, he's also successful. At first, he lost the $40 million bet, and then he later get a $150 million. It was a very good thing. That was also when we had a change of character for Phyllis Leiter, now into a black American man. And then it was actually a good thing. The second one was Quantum of Solace. You know, Spectre was actually becoming a very dominant organization in James Bond. The shift down to Mr. Green. So Quantum of Solace, Mr. Green, who is actually a scientist for the green industries, was actually planning something big in Bolivia, but the government didn't actually believe him. They thought James was, you know, overhearing things or taking things too personal. And then he had to help this young lady as well, so get revenge for what was did to her family and herself. A perfect combo as well. And Daniel Craig is a very excellent actor, no doubt about that. He actually is one of the most dominant James Bond characters I've actually experienced for myself. Yeah, it was very, very, very beautiful. And he also came in with Skyfall. You know, Skyfall, right from the start of the film, I got a little bit disappointed. James Bond was shot from a train, and then he fell into a river. Nothing was heard from him again. So I was thinking, okay, this movie is actually going to have a whole 10 of events, but then it didn't go wrong. It actually turned out to be something better. That was when hard disk was stolen from the MI6 with names of their secret agents on it. And it was actually stolen by an ex-MI6 agent who releases the names every week. He intends to release the names every week. He did release the first 3 names, and then all these people who were undercover agents somewhere, you know, in terrorist groups were brought out and killed. So James Bond had to step in to find a way to stop it. It was beautiful. And then James Bond, played by Daniel Craig, also comes in again at 2015 with Spectre. That was the biggest James Bond film I saw. Spectre has so much, you know, names for itself. I was growing at that time, so I had Spectre. So yeah, I did have a look at it. And then before this video, I also had a look at it to, you know, refreshing my mind on some of the things. Eve Moneypenny is actually kind of becoming dominant here, right from Skyfall to Spectre. She was actually a very dominant person here. So Spectre has been an organization, and then James was actually set to find out more about Spectre, but then the whole turn of events becomes so overwhelming that he actually has new you know, ideas about organization. The first time I saw Dave Bautista in the movie, I knew it was going to be a very badass film. Yeah, Dave Bautista is actually a very great actor, and having him on this film was actually an excellent, a beautiful thing as well. Yeah. And in 2021, we had the latest James Bond film ever. It's been quite a long journey from 62 to 2021, having no time to die. So no time to die, I was wondering, nobody has time to die. We're all having time to live, so why no time to die? Now James Bond actually takes the retirement. He lives in Jamaica with his wife, let me put it that way. He met in the previous James Bond film, Spectre. But then he gets a call from his friend, Phyllis, and then tells him that he wants him to help him rescue a kidnapped scientist. But then the whole turn of events actually make the mission the opposite. They actually come up find of a scientist who actually is creating some sort of weapon to actually cause great disaster. And then we have a whole lot of secrets revealing he actually loses Phyllis, and then we have new people coming in as well. That was when James Bond actually lost the status quo as 007, but then it will later actually given back to you. So the James Bond franchise has been a very great thing. The introductions are so perfect. You know, with every James Bond film, I love kind of how the beats actually starts with a film, and then the gunshot comes in with the blood covering the screen. Then you have this and that. It was so amazing. Yeah, I love the James Bond film franchise. So about 25 or 26 of these out, and then I'm hoping to see another James Bond film. You know, I don't kind of take it lightly that James Bond is actually dead. We thought he's dead. He was dead in Skyfall, but then he came up ramping again, and then he came to No Time to Die. Yeah, so that's that for now. Let me know your thoughts and impressions about the James Bond films if you've seen all, and then this video as well. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't. Give me a thumbs up as well, so I get more people interested. So another time.